Why is Chris Olave not your clear wide receiver one out of the rookie class at this point?
Chris Olave is not my clear wide receiver one out of the rookie class at this point because I am projecting players into the future, whereas other people are merely looking at what they're doing today. And I think that is a tremendously poor decision to make. So that's pretty much it. And what I mean by that, maybe I'll elaborate, I guess, considering we're here. What I mean by that is Chris Olave is, he's got a few different things that have historically not been excellent for high ceiling production. One of those things is his average depth of target, which I'm slightly less concerned about now because it's come down a lot. When we first had this conversation, I think it was at like 18 or something ridiculous. Now it's at 14.8, which is like just outside the range that we usually look for. So it's not precluding him from that standpoint. But before that, we actually got the midseason report from Matt Harmon on reception perception. And I was concerned about Chris Olave winning exclusively in these deep quadrants of the field. And I was like, what if he's only a deep threat? That could be a bad thing. Sure, he's getting a lot of targets, but we're dealing with a small sample. If he's only a deep threat, those targets are going to come down. Then we got the reception perception report, which said Chris Olave is winning everything. Chris Olave is one of the best route runners in football, and that kind of changes everything. Now I'm no longer worried about that, and now his ADOT has come down, and now I think
you invented a fake reason to be worried, and then it was turned out that reason was fake, and so you're no longer worried.
Well, what happened was everything changed, and we got actual information.
Nothing actually changed. Exactly what you were told. What happened is what happened.
That's one thing. Number one that was a bit worrisome early in the season. And it should be noted, I'm getting a lot of flack for saying that we shouldn't have been buying Chris Olave. In week 3, I exclusively said to go and buy Week Olave in my column on the Patreon. So get out of here. That was before everyone else got in on Chris Olave, and then his price skyrocketed after that. So anyways, moral of the story here was nothing, and we'll continue. The other issues with the Chris Olave profile for me were simply that he is not a prototype, which is, again, not as much of a concern as it would have been, say, 5 years ago, because the NFL has changed tremendously in the past few years. And we're getting more small players drafted highly in the last 3 years than we have in like the last 20 combined. Like, it's crazy. The NFL has completely flipped that. And I'm at the point now where I don't care if someone isn't a prototype, but I kind of like them to be a prototype still. Like, I'll give Drake London a little boost because I'm like, he's still a big dude that's probably going to play X. Whereas Chris Olave is like, he's a small dude. He's not even playing X. He's playing flanker. I don't know. Maybe he's going to get a whole bunch of targets for the rest of his life. Maybe he'll be a 30% target share player at flanker, which we don't normally see. It's possible.
Wait, these are the only things? What about the whole thread that you put about late declares and early declares?
I'm getting to that. You want me to lay out the whole conversation?
Well, you said the only other thing was that he wasn't a prototype.
No, not the only other thing. The next thing, we are only at 54 minutes in this podcast. We have promised the masses 1 hour and 45 minutes of runtime.
Oh, I think
I'm going to cover everything.
Hey, right, let's hear it.
All right. So then the last thing that I think is probably my biggest concern from the start has always been that he's a senior. He did not declare in 2021 when he probably should have, or probably shouldn't have, I guess, because this has worked out pretty well for him. But when we thought he should have declared in 2021, he chose not to. And I thought that was a bit foolish at the time. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, we can understand why he didn't, because he probably wasn't going to be drafted 11th overall like he was in 2022. He probably went back and actually improved his draft position in the NFL draft by staying in school an extra year. But what we see with seniors, generally speaking, is that they just don't have the super high ceilings that the juniors have, that the early declares have. And when we look at things like, well, should we just throw out his profile at this point? And I think that's a really fair question. And I don't have like a concrete answer on it, because how on earth will we have a concrete answer on at what specific point do we throw out a prior? So what we can do is we can look at all of the players that have done similar things to what Chris Olave has been doing. Chris Olave is at how many points per game is Chris Olave at now?
14.2.
14.2 points per game. So if we look at the seniors drafted rounds 1 to 3 for the past 20 years, we have.
But I mean, he's been I think the 14.2 points per game undersells his impressiveness. Like, we're talking about a 26% targets per route run guy on a massive air yard share, like league leading air yard share. Like this, like he's playing with Andy Dalton, and he is not particularly ran hot on touchdown luck. Like, I think this is a profile that he's laid down where it's theoretically possible that he could be hitting a 17, 18 point per game ceiling this year.
His expected fantasy points isn't 17, 18 points, is it?
No, that's not what I'm saying his expected fantasy points would be. I'm not saying he's like running cold in this particular situation. I'm saying that, like, he's not. I'm saying that his peripheral numbers, like in terms of how many targets he's earning, where on the field he's earning them. Like, if we just sort of drop this into a better situation, this profile is like backable up to like 17, 18 points per game without being particularly shocking to see. That is what I'm saying. I'm not saying in this exact situation he should be scoring more, but he's running cold.
So all that we can do is compare it to the history of the world, right? That's our only real option here. We can throw it all priors, or we can look at history and let history dictate how we evaluate the situation going forward. So we have 2 players that are seniors drafted 1 to 3 with greater than 15 points per game. They're Eddie Royale and Brandon Ayuk. I am a large fan of Brandon Ayuk. Have been since his rookie year, when he played really, really well and did all the things that we would have liked him to do. He came into, like, I think that buying Brandon Ayuk in 2021 was the right choice. It didn't work out. I think it was still the right choice. Buying Chris Olave is potentially different, but not necessarily different. The reason that Brandon Ayuk was so much a slam dunk buy was most of that offseason, he was being drafted around wide receiver 20. He wasn't all that expensive. He had a bunch of narratives about George Kittle missing time and Deebo Samuel missing time and blah, blah, blah. Everybody's gone through this 100 times already. Anyway, Brandon Ayuk has never actually done anything awesome, possibly because of the presence of George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. Eddie Royale basically disappeared from the world, but Eddie Royale is nowhere near the prospect that Chris Olave was. Chris Olave is head and shoulders over both of these guys, in my opinion, in terms of prospect quality. Then we have Terry McLaurin, who scored 13.7. Again, not even close to the same level of prospect as Chris Olave, and didn't have as good of a rookie year as Chris Olave. Deebo Samuel, Chase Claypool, these are both guys that did similar things, but not nearly as impressive as Chris Olave. None of these guys are actually 1-for-1 comps for Chris Olave. We do not have a 1-for-1 comp for Chris Olave. Chris Olave should be in the latest edition of the rankings on Bulletproof or patreon.com/Bulletproof FF. I have Chris Olave ranked as an A buy, like you must buy Chris Olave, because he isn't being valued like a superstar yet. He's valued at wide receiver 7 or 8 or something on Fantasy Calc, which I think is a pretty fair price. And I think what's going to happen by the time we get to the offseason is that people are going to look at Chris Olave and say, this guy is a superstar, which is fair. He is doing everything that we could ask him to do as a rookie. You cannot put together a more impressive non-Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase rookie year than what Chris Olave has done. So I think from that standpoint, we should feel confident that Chris Olave is a exceptionally good player going forward. And I have him as a buy. And I would like everyone to acknowledge that.
And you have him in a separate tier below Drake London and in a tier with George Pickens.
That's right. And I have him in a separate tier from Drake London because so Drake London
gaslighting your audience
is amazing. Drake, all the things that we love about what's his name? What's this guy's talking about? Chris Olave. All the things we love about Chris Olave
clearly better.
Is basically Drake London is doing the same things or better. So like Drake London has like a 28 or 29% target share last I looked. Maybe it's come down. I haven't looked in a couple weeks, but it was like 28, 29% like very recently, which is just wildly high. He's also
I only have a CPR up and it's good. It's 2.33, which is strong. His target share is 26%. 26.1%, which is very good.
Okay, so he's in line with Chris Olave now. Because Olave's around there, 25 something, isn't he?
I'm not sure. I only have per route numbers pulled up, but
they have the exact same target share, 26.1% per playerprofiler.com, which is wild. Okay, so we have
one big difference though is that Olave has a 40.7% air yard share versus a 25.1% air yard share for London.
Yeah, and one other big difference is that Drake London is a bulletproof 21-year-old early declare. And that is really where the differences come from, is that we should be projecting Drake London for larger gains in the offseason than we should be projecting Chris Olave from. And if we were going to talk about, well, Chris Olave is, really, really good. Sure, fair. He is really, really good. I'm not pushing back on that. However, I am pushing back on Drake London also having to share the field with Kyle Pitts and Chris Olave having to share the field with who? Who's number two? Like Alvin Kamara?
Well, we're going to get a chance to see what London can do without Kyle Pitts. The first opportunity he had, he was alpha by Olamide Zaccheaus. But I imagine
we're talking another level, another caliber of player. We're not talking about the superstars today, Jacob. Leave Zaccheaus out of this, okay? Yeah. I've even taken the time to learn how to say his name because he's such a superstar. Everybody just knows who I say when I call him Oz. So, anyways, what we're looking at when we're looking at these players that have these crazy high target shares or crazy high points per game as rookies, when we look at the seniors that do it, we don't get amazing results. When we look at the juniors that do it, we get amazing results in terms of career production. It's just not the same thing. And when we look at that, kind of comparing as we go down, okay, we're going to look at 20% target share guys in each bucket. We're going to look at 25% in each bucket. We're going to look at 18% in each bucket. Like the early declares always, as a whole, outproduce the seniors. So for me, I'm just going to go ahead and bet on the history of the junior being the better player than the senior. And it's really not all that complicated.